What's up, y'all? Welcome back to From the Ground Up. I just got back from a walk. I took a call while I was walking, a little walk and talk, if you will, with my little brother. And today's episode is really speaking to the person who is right on the edge of potentially starting a business, or maybe you just started and you're like, what the heck have I done? Oh my gosh. And I think it's going to be really helpful even for seasoned business owners just to kind of like hear some main takeaways I had from this call with my little brother. And what I talked to him about was he is getting ready to kind of take the leap and start his own business, his own entrepreneurial journey. And he was just kind of sharing with me some thoughts he was having about it, some fears he has, the plans that he has, just to kind of share with me and, ask for some feedback and some advice along the way. And I got done with the call and I was like, you know what? First of all, this was so fun to just talk to someone who is so just excited and has such a fresh outlook on entrepreneurship and, the sky's the limit mentality and everything and all of that stuff. Like, we need to keep, if we're in the game of entrepreneurship, we need to make sure that, we never really lose that excitement. But it was just fun to talk to someone who is just about to do the dang thing. And so this episode really is for the person thinking about taking that leap, or maybe you just took that leap, you're about to take that leap, whatever that looks like. I think that this will be really helpful for you today. And what I wanted to walk through today is kind of these four main takeaways, these four main points that kind of came out of this conversation with my little brother, because they really can be applied to every business owner, every entrepreneur, right? Like, whether you've been it for 10 years or more, you're going to take something out of this. Or if you're the one that's about to build it from the ground up, this is going to be very helpful, hopefully, to you. And those four main takeaways, I'm going to name them here so you know where we're going. And then I'm going to kind of walk through each one of how they came up and what I took away from the conversation. The first one is fear is not a red light. The second one is most people don't even start. The third one is you can't fail if you stay in the game. And the fourth one is vision is necessary, but clarity sells. Okay, so let's dive in. So the first one I wanted to talk about is this idea that fear is not a red light. This came up because, talking to my little brother, he is getting ready to leave a job, leave a stable paycheck, something that he's been excelling at. Like, he's climbed the ranks in this career path that he's on. He's made good money. He is getting ready to say goodbye to those things, the stability. And it's scary. He's like, it's scary to quit and move on and, be all on my own and have it to figure this out on my own. And something that we, talked about is, yes, it's scary. Fear means that there's some risk involved, right? But also risk, I think, means that there's great potential, right? So the more scary something is, probably the more risky it is. And that means the more potential there is if it works out, right? And so I told him, I was like, if it doesn't scare you, it's probably not big enough of a risk to be meaningful anyways, right? But when it is scary, and when you do take that risk, and when you succeed at it, it will change your life pretty much in proportion to the amount of fear that was involved in order to do it. So I told him, I was like, fear is very normal, right? There's nothing wrong with being scared. What I don't want to do is like glamorize recklessness, right? That's different than doing it scared, right? But it's also not about staying comfortable. Who changed the world because they stayed comfortable? Answer, no one, And so we just kind of talked through this of holding that fear of leaving the stability, the comfort of, a paycheck, and taking the risk on himself, on the unknown, right? It is an unknown, but there is one known piece of it is he's the one that's doing it, and he can control himself, and he can control the effort he puts in. He can control the grind. He can control everything about how he builds this thing from the ground up. And that's a risk I'd be willing to take. Bet on myself all day long. Okay. So that was the first big takeaway is fear is not a red light. In fact, a lot of times it's an indication that if you succeed at the thing that you're afraid to do, but that you want to do, that success is probably going to change your life in proportion to the amount of fear it took to do it. Okay, the second takeaway was this idea that most people don't even start, you guys. Like, most people stay in the comfortable job. They take the comfortable paycheck. They keep the salary. They also complain. I mean, business owners complain too, right? But business owners, we're usually complaining about things we inflict on ourselves. Employees complain about things inflicted upon them, right? So they complain. Sometimes they dream about getting out or about this vision that they have of what could have been, right? But they never move. Most people never try. And I told him, I was like, the moment you quit the job, the moment you invest your savings, the moment you bet on yourself, you're already ahead of, quote, most people, right? Because most people don't even try. And, he mentioned to me, he was like, in order to do this, I'm going to be using and investing my entire life savings to start this business, first of all, and then to have money to live off of while I build it. And he brought that up, and I was kind of like, yeah. Yeah, of course you are. And I shared with him there was a time in the life of Genesis where I actually had to reinvest my entire life savings. This was over 6 figures of our savings account back into the company in order to make payroll, make rent, and keep us alive. Like, there was a time years ago where I had to do that. And I shared that with him because it is not lost on me the weightiness and the heaviness and the impact that draining your bank account to save something or to build something has on you, right? And I've been there. And I told him, I was like, was it terrifying? 100%. Like, I had worked so hard. I had saved up this money. Like, I have 2 young kids. I have a mortgage. Like, I have all these things, right? And at the end of the day, what is the alternative? Closing it down? Absolutely not. Right. And I told him, I was like, I'm going to bet on me and my team every single day. And that's kind of the identity shift that you have to have as an entrepreneur, right? This is what entrepreneurs do day in and day out. We are wired differently, which is why most people don't do it. And this is no shame to people who don't start businesses. I really don't believe everyone is meant to be an entrepreneur, right? Like, otherwise, everyone would. And so this is no shade or shame if you're like, I am happy in my comfortable job. Like, y'all, I have 20 people who are employed by my company. Like, I need people who don't want to be entrepreneurs. You know what I mean? So, like, it's not, shade to people who aren't starting their own business. Again, this episode is speaking to the person who is like, I think I want to do it, but I'm scared. Like, I have this big vision, but I'm scared. What if it doesn't work out, right? That's who I'm speaking to today. And that truly is the identity that we have to take on if we're going to build something from the ground up. We have to lay it all on the line. And again, it comes back to that first point is like, your success is going to be proportional to the amount of risk you're willing to take and the amount of just suck that you're willing to stay in throughout the journey, And so most people don't even start, and that's why, because you're putting it all on the line, and that's okay. But the ones who do start, you're ahead of most people because most people don't. And the next point that I took away is you cannot fail if you just stay in the game. And this is kind of like a little bit of a philosophy. This is like a core philosophy piece, if you will. Because my brother, he had mentioned like feeling this a little bit of like, oh my gosh, but what if it doesn't work? Like, what if I fail? That'll be embarrassing. And we talked about what that looks like in business. What does failure look like in business? And in my opinion, I think many successful entrepreneurs would agree as well. The only way you fail in business is if you quit. You let it beat you. And I know that this is a hard stance to take. Like, I get it. I know, because there are times, right, where we choose to leave something. And I think there's a difference, right? Choosing to leave a business or close a business because you are choosing to take a different, better path. That's different than quitting. To me, quitting is leaving because you believe it is your only option. It's never your only option. You always have the option to stay in the game and not give up. So, I talked to him about what is the worst case scenario? What's your big fear? What is the story that you're so afraid of happening? And he's like, well, I put it all on the line. I quit my job. I spend all my money. I run out of money because I don't make enough money and I have to go find another job. And he's like, with a paycheck, I build my savings back up and then I try again. And I'm like, ding, 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 ding. Like, it's not like you go out and you try it this time and you fail and everything burns to the ground and you're homeless. Like, that's not the reality for him, right? And it's not the reality for most people. And so that's kind of what I wanted him to see, was this fear of failure. First of all, failure is not real unless you let it be real in business, right? And second of all, like, winning or succeeding simply is refusing to give up and choosing to stay in the game, right? Getting yourself out of the victim corner of, this is happening to me, I have no choice, I'm going to close it down, I failed. Getting yourself out of that into the creative corner of, this way didn't work. What else can I try? How can I do it differently? What ducks do I need to get lined up to try again? Right. And we talked about that and we reframed how trying again because the first way didn't work is not failure, because that is not quitting, right? Failure equals quitting, and that's not quitting. That would be learning as you go and staying in the game, right? And like, two people that I have learned a lot from as I've like listened to their stuff, read their stuff. The first one, Simon Sinek, right? He has this concept in a book called The Infinite Game. And the concept is there is no finish line. And if it's an infinite game, like, there is no finish line. So there is no like, I reach this score and I win like you would in like a sports game or something like that. And that also means like there is no like losing unless you step out of the game, right? So that's this concept of, in business and really in life in general, the only way that you quote unquote fail is you choose to quit because you believed it was your only option. I'm not talking about the people who get out of it because they chose a different, better for them option. That is a choice. You took ownership and you were creative and you chose something different. That's not what I'm talking about here. The other person is Alex Hormozy. I listen to his stuff. I'm actually in his scale advisory right now. I've read all of his books, all the things. And he always says winning is staying in the game. His podcast is literally called The Game, and he's talking about the game of business. And it's all about how to stay in it, because that's how you win. That's how you succeed, is you stay in it. And so this is not just a, thing I've pulled from thin air that I'm teaching you guys today. This is something that like real successful entrepreneurs have done and are teaching as their core philosophies. This idea that there is no finish line. Winning is staying in it. Failing is quitting. Okay. And so I want to harp again on like, winning is not a revenue number. Winning is not, well, when I make $1 million, I've won. Because newsflash, you guys, I've made $1 million. My company makes multiple $1 million every single year. And I can tell you right now, I don't feel like I've won. Like, I feel like we are barely scratching the surface. We are staying in the game. And that is success for me, you guys. Like, winning in business is not a revenue number, and it's not a massive exit with lots of money, right? It is not selling your business for hundreds of $1,000s, millions of dollars, whatever. Like, you don't win that way either, right? And I'll say, like, I personally know entrepreneurs who have sold or exited their companies for millions of dollars, even $1 billion, you guys. Like, I know these people personally. They are in my personal circles. And they have shared with me that after that, after they sold their company for $1 billion, they felt lost. They felt broken. They felt anything but successful. And that is literally because winning or success in business is not defined by those metrics. Success in business is staying in the arena despite getting knocked down and hitting walls time and time again. And that will happen. It is inevitable. You are going to get knocked down so many freaking times. And so all you got to do is get back up and be like, okay, what knocked me down? Great. Learn from that. Let me try a different way. You're going to get knocked down again. Okay. What knocked me down that time? Okay. Learn from that. Let me try again in a different way. Like that's what the game is. That's winning in business. And I was sharing all this with him. And he said to me, this is going to be the last time I ever take a paycheck from someone that's not myself. And I was like, that is identity level commitment to entrepreneurship, y'all. Like, that is him being like, I am ready to go all in. I'm going to bet it on me, myself, and I, because who better to bet it all on, right? And I'm going to win. And I just had so much fun, talking about these concepts with him. And we were talking about like, just, you're going to go start. And if you don't get a customer for 6 months, that's not a failure. You learn from it and you go. If your first month is slow, it's not a failure. You learn from it and you go. If you start to run ads and they don't work, it's not a failure. You learn from that and you make them different and you go again. Failure is quitting because you think it's your only option. However, if you adjust, learn from it and keep going, you're still in the game. And that's winning and that's success. Okay, my final takeaway, my final point from my conversation is this idea that vision is necessary, but clarity is what sells. Okay. What do I mean by this? So he shared with me, at first he was sharing his initial thoughts for how he's going to put boots on the ground and like start up his business. And then he started getting into, well, here's what I really want it to turn into. Here's what I really see happening down the line. And this business that he wants to end up having a company that goes in and clears land for large commercial projects. He mentioned like, hundreds of acre lots that a neighborhood's going to be built on, right? He wants his company to be the one that is called to come in, clear the land and prepare the land for the neighborhood to be built. That's like his wildest dream come true. That's his big vision. And he's like, obviously tomorrow I don't have a company, a team, equipment to do that. So where I want to start is land clearing for residential properties and fence building. And, I told him, I was like, your vision is really, really strong. Like you have a very clear picture of where you want to end up and where you're going. And like most visionaries, myself included, we can get so fixated on the excitement of the big vision of changing the game, right? Like we tend to skip the important work of getting focused on what must happen now. And that's just kind of like a kryptonite for all visionaries. And so I shared that with him because I'm a visionary and I have learned this about myself. I tend to look ahead 10, 15 years ahead, and I see a world where we have killed the Kegels, and I see a world where no one is talking about the pelvic floor as being just tight or just weak. And if they're tight, they need relaxation and breathing. And if they're weak, they need Kegels and strengthening. Like that's going to be dead thanks to my team and the work that we're doing on this field, right? And that's what I see. When I think about Genesis and when I think about my work, that's what I see. He sees this huge company that is the go-to company for clearing these commercial, huge lots of land and doing it better than anyone else, right? And I was like, that is a strong vision. And we have to bring that vision back down to the ground for a second. And we have to ask ourselves, okay, what is the first step we're going to take to build that vision? Right. And so he's like, okay, well, what I plan to start with is I want to start with fence building primarily, on like residential properties. And he's like, not like the wooden privacy fences. He's talking about like on ranches, farmland, stuff like that. He's like, I want to start with fence building and land clearing as well, because many people need both. He's like, if you need a fence, you usually, if you have, livestock or you live on a farm or a ranch, like to build the fence, you're going to have to clear the land. So he was kind of like, I'm kind of going to market them as two separate businesses almost. And it's like, do you need land clearing? Well, I'm marketing to you over here. Do you need a fence build? I'm marketing to you over here. And I gave him some feedback there because if I have literally learned anything in these years of owning and operating and growing a business, it's that we tend to focus on too many things, right? Especially the visionary personalities. We're like, I can do that one, and I can also do that, and I can also do this, and I can also do this. Like, hence the person who started a pelvic health clinic, opened multiple clinic locations in DFW, went across state lines, opened a coaching business, built a course, coaches business owners and founders, runs a clinical mastermind. Like, I am preaching to the choir here. Like, I am the pot calling the kettle black. Like, I have done it. And so that is why I'm qualified to tell him and to tell you, pick one. Like, pick one and start there, bro. Like, it is you, yourself, and you. Like, you don't have a team like I do right now. Like, pick one, because typically we are focused on way too much. And when we have multiple priorities, nothing is the priority. And I shared with him like the flashlight versus the laser analogy of, like, so many entrepreneurs are more of a flashlight mentality. So we want to do all the things. We're shining a little bit of light on multiple things, and we're putting some effort into multiple buckets. But at the end of the day, we only have 100% effort. And if we have multiple buckets, you're going to have 40% effort here, 20% effort there, 5% effort there, whatever effort is left in this bucket, and like, then nothing is getting your 100%. So I said, we need to be a laser, right? Point your effort, energy, money, marketing, messaging, building to one thing. And I said, who is your ideal customer? What pain points do they have? Like, what are they struggling with that you're going to be able to come in and fix for them? And he thought for a second. He said, well, like, they can't buy livestock that they want to start their ranch because they don't have a fence, or they have a 10-acre property and their dog, doesn't stay by the house and keeps getting out because they don't have a fence, or maybe their fence is bad and their cattle keeps getting out, right? And so he's telling me these problems that his soon-to-be ideal client has, and I'm like, aha. So I'm not hearing that they're saying, I need this land cleared. I need you to clear out these trees. They don't realize necessarily that they need land cleared. They just know their dog needs to stop getting out. They just know they are trying to buy cattle, but they can't because they don't have a fence, right? They just know they need a fence. And I told him, I was like, when we're marketing and talking about messaging and stuff, we want to be selling the outcome that the fence will get them, right? We need to know the pain points of our ideal customer, and we need to talk about the fence fixes that. And I build the fence, right? And then the land clearing might be a part of that process to getting the outcome that they want via the fence. But like, you don't need to market both. You don't need to say, I build fences, I clear land, at least not in the beginning. Once you're like, you have a business rolling, you have some traction, sure, you can add arms to your business. What I'm talking about is building something from the ground up. Get started and pick one thing, market one thing, talk about one thing that your ideal customer is struggling with and that you know exactly how to fix and that you are better than anyone else at doing. That's what you do. And again, the land clearing could be part of that process. That's great, but you don't market both. Okay, not at first when you're building. And I also want to say, like, yes, be a jack of all trades early on. Like, I built Genesis from the ground up by myself. Like, I launched it myself. I hired early on, but like, I'm the founder. Like, I launched this vision and started to build it, right? And so you have to be a jack of all trades early on. I'm not saying just do one thing. You do have to be scrappy. You do have to be creative. You do have to figure it all out as you go while you're building. But how you get there during the process and your messaging up front are two different things, right? So speak to one person who has one problem that you solve better than anyone else. And the way you solve it can look different person to person, client to client, but we're not selling the thing you do. We're selling the outcome that your client needs because of a pain point that you know that they have. Okay. So that's what I mean whenever I say, like, vision is necessary. Like, if we want to be successful and stay in the game, talk about staying in the game, like, we have to have this big vision that will keep us going, that will keep us going when we're up at night, running out of money to make payroll. Like, vision is necessary, but it's the clarity piece of what you're doing and what you can do for people that is going to sell, right? And build your client base. So just to recap kind of those four main takeaways. Number one, fear is not a red light. Okay. And kind of what we talked about there was usually the more fear you have of doing something, it's because there's a higher risk involved. But my pushback is that doesn't mean don't do it. That means like if you take the leap, if you take the risk and you succeed, the payoff of that, the successful outcome of that is typically going to be directly proportional to the amount of risk and the amount of fear that it took to start. So fear is on a red light. Number 2, most people don't even start. And again, I'm not casting shade on people who don't start businesses. I am speaking directly to the person who feels pulled and called to start a business and they're scared. And I'm telling you, like, most people don't start. So if you just try, like, you're already ahead of most people. So, like, just try, just go, just do it. Number 3, you can't fail if you just stay in the game. So much fear when it comes to business and starting a business and building a business is, but what if I fail? And I kind of reframed failure is not what we think it is. Failure is quitting because you believe that's your only option in business. It's never your only option. So if that's failure, success is staying in the game. Just stay in it. Keep trying, learn, pivot, get creative, try something different. Just stay in it. And then number 4, vision is necessary, but clarity is what sells. So to our fellow visionaries out there, have a big vision. Dream big and shoot for the freaking moon. Like, go for it. And keep your feet on the ground. Get clear on what problem you solve for exactly which person, and learn how to tell the world that you are the person who can solve that problem better than anyone else on this planet. Okay. So if you are standing at the edge right now, you're scared, you're unsure, you're feeling the pull to launch your own thing, but you're afraid of failure, whatever, good. That means it matters, you guys. Like, you don't win by avoiding fear. You don't win by never failing. You win by staying in the game. And if you just start, you're already ahead of 99% of people because most people won't. So if this was helpful, if this hit for you, right? Like, I would love it if you would share this to your stories, tag me, share this to someone else who maybe is thinking of starting their own business. Share this to a colleague, share this to someone you want to be a business partner with, just share, because that's how we change the game, y'all. We change the game by being better together and sharing things that have helped us along the way. That's why I have this podcast, so I can share things that have helped me along the way. So hopefully they help you. And, if you're actively building something from the ground up, maybe you've already started, stay in the game. Quitting does not have to be your only option, even if it's hard, even if you keep getting knocked down, you guys. Like, reach out to me on Instagram if you're having a hard time. I don't promise that I know everything. I do promise that I love talking to y'all and I love helping you guys. And I would love to troubleshoot with you and encourage you and do all the things. So DM me if you ever feel the desire to, and I can go back and forth with you there. But, like Nike says, just do it. They got that part right, y'all. Just do it. All right, y'all. Thank you for listening. I hope you guys have a great rest of your day today, and let's change the game.